What is up, guys? Frosty Aussie here today for another Frosty Features. Today, we have our second character for the Starjammers team. The one, the only, the long-awaited, one of the break glass characters I have been harping on that we had left. Howard the Duck. So if you haven't been here before, what this is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force. And I am your guide through the pages of drawn lore. So with that, let's get going. Clicked on the wrong screen. According to Scopely, what this is the character description that we are given in the Marvel Strike Force blog post from their website. I'm going to read this and then I will rate it at the end of the feature. Who is Howard the Duck? Due to a cosmic mishap, don't you hate it when that happens? Howard the Duck was pulled from his home planet of Duck World and stranded on Earth. With no way back, he carved out a new life as a hard-nosed private detective, solving bizarre cases in a world that never quite makes sense. Though he lacks superpowers, Howard relies on razor-sharp sarcasm, street smarts, fancy jetpack, and a big old gun to outwit criminals, aliens, and the occasional caped lunatic. So with that, we will rate that at the end of the feature. This is the one, the only Howard the Duck. So this is Howard the, a lot of time in Frosty Features we stick into the lore. We're going to talk a little bit about publication history. So this is the famous redesign of Howard the Duck. Specifically the Disney requested ones. So we'll talk about that a little bit further on, but so this is more or less the one we see in the game. This is very similar to what he looks like in the comics. This is what we see in the MCU, okay? So for context, if you haven't seen a Frosty feature before, typically we stick in Marvel 616 canon, so that's what I'll be referencing mostly in this. But with that, Howard the Duck is actually from another reality, and that's very important to note. So name, Howard Duckson. First appearance is Fear number 19 in 1973. He appears alongside, first appearance is alongside Korek the Barbarian in a story that circles around Man-Thing fighting Throg, which we covered in detail in Frosty Features Man-Thing, so check it out. Or well, hold on. We covered his battles with Throg in detail in that one, not specifically this specific battle, I don't believe. Powers/abilities, super reflexes, some mystic powers. So, Howard the Duck is a satirical character. He was made and very much followed. He is a character that is taken out of a weird situation, placed into a different weird situation, and so he is essentially there to serve as social commentary, commenting on all the weird differences that humans do between how it was in Duck World, okay? With that, he finds himself doing different jobs, doing very, very similar to cartoon counterparts like a Donald Duck or a Daffy Duck or what have you. So we see essentially with Howard the Duck, we get different episodes. So a lot of your comic book arcs and things like that don't really apply to Howard. In the majority of, so now in modern times, since he's kind of had a recouping of a following, there's a little bit more as far as actual storylines that you can like read one comic to the other, but for the most part, each comic for him was a different little episode, if that makes sense. They're self-contained. So in these, he does different things. So there's things like fighting vampires or becoming a plumber or what have you. So at first he wasn't a private detective, or a private eye, whatever. He becomes that over time, and he starts to develop a character, but then one writer leaves, another writer is brought in, the old writer comes back, one writer does a last thing, one writer dies, then other people come in, and ultimately we get very small glimpses at Howard as a character, and a lot of the things that happen are unexplained because they're self-contained things, right? Typically what we talk about most of the time on Frosty Features is these self-contained, or not these, excuse me, are these comic book arcs, not the self-contained stories. So with that, in these self-contained stories, Some of them we do see, it is referenced multiple times. Howard is just a duck. He is a duck. Instead of wings, he has hands, so he can't fly. Besides, Marvel Strike Force has granted him a jetpack, and he has a jetpack when he works with, I believe, the Guardians of the Galaxy. But ultimately, he pops in and out of stories. He randomly will assist different teams. He goes by different names, and he'll randomly get different powers. Some of these powers have been re-referenced in his various one-shot stories, which kind of insinuate he does have powers. So, with that, it seems that Howard the Duck has some form of super reflexes. He is extremely fast and can move, depending on which story you're reading, he can move faster than the eye can see, right? So that is superhuman to some extent. There is a comic book arc from more recent times where Howard the Duck becomes a Sorcerer Supreme. So he learns to use mystic powers. He also has the ability to break down mental barriers, so he has some resilience to having him being mind controlled, which also insinuates some mystic powers. These two things do not always come out. Okay, so ultimately, being as strong as a duck, being a slightly anthropomorphic duck, he is very similar power level to a human, but faster. Aliases. Many aliases. When you have a satirical character that has many one-offs, these one-offs create Howard portraying himself as some sort of superhero. Him, Sorcerer Supreme or whatever. And ultimately, he steps into a lot of different roles, as cartoon characters do, right? Donald Duck, Daffy Duck, they all have their own Duck Dodgers, right? They have their own thing depending on the story that's being told. It could be Howard the Duck Vampire Hunter, right? He has a lot of, surprisingly, so he has his own rogues gallery, as most Marvel heroes do, but surprisingly, he runs into some actual powerhouses in the Marvel universe, like Dracula, right? So we could have Howard the Vampire Hunter, or, the Vampire Doctor or something. So anyway, ultimately, there's a crap ton of aliases that are associated with Howard the Duck, and he could randomly introduce himself as something else, given any different comic you may read. So many affiliations. I picked the ones that were not funny. I thought it was funny that they're not funny. So very specifically, Defenders, Spider Society, and the Fearsome Four are all things he has been a part of. Being a one-off character, a character that doesn't have about as much story arcs, things like that. Another thing that comes off with him is that he serves as cameos all the time. He's a cameo to She-Hulk very often, Spider-Man very often. So ultimately, he randomly will pop up and join these kind of heavy-hitting teams. So these are three notable ones, but also very similar to his aliases. He has an awful lot of affiliations because of his tendency to pop up. Background, he is a Duck-Worldian, which is Earth. So as I said before, Frosty Features is centered in Earth 616. This is the main Marvel continuity in the comics, and the MCU does not count as the 616. From a comic book reader, it is 1599999. That's the MCU. So 616 being main comic book continuity. So Howard the Duck is taken from his world on Earth 47920, which was later retconned to Earth 791021. I looked at my notes for that. But ultimately, those two Earth designations are the same. They were retconned, and he's the type of character that'll make comments about it. So he very much falls into the same vein of She-Hulk and Deadpool, where he'll make comments to the audience, right? So this retcon would be immediately brought up by Howard. So anyway, he's Duck-Worldian from Earth 47920. He is pulled into Earth 616 by the battle between Throg and Man-Thing. Who died? He did. So you can't be a superhero, supervillain in the Marvel universe without somebody dying. It's almost the rule, right? So for the character to become that character, somebody has to die. In Howard the Duck's case, he dies. So when he is brought into Earth 616 by Man-Thing, the writer at the time, Steve Gerber, thought it would be really funny to have a sarcastic humanoid duck making comments that looked almost identical to Donald Duck, by the way. He thought it would be really funny. And so he appears in Fear number 3, and then in the following issue, so he appears in the Florida Everglades along with Korik the Barbarian, and in the following issue, whilst in the same battle aiding Man-Thing, he falls off the steps of Oblivion, and he is presumed dead. It was because, hey, I made this annoying character that's really funny, now he's gone, thank God, right? That was the idea. And then after Steve Gerber killed him off, there's a lot of, you can look into, Steve Gerber had a lot of things about the rights to Howard the Duck, and so it became a whole thing, but he did kill him off originally, and then it on a writing campaign, a lot of fans of the comic wanted Howard back, so he ends up and falling off the steps of Oblivion. Instead of dying, he ends up landing in Cleveland, Ohio, instead of dying. But he actually, factually, in the context of the publications, he died so that he could live. So Steve Gerber ends up writing his story starting in Cleveland, Ohio, and then he starts to really like the character, and then you get into some litigation and things like that, copyright and all sorts of stuff. So ultimately, that's what I was talking about earlier. Marvel, Steve Gerber left, and then Marvel wanted him back, etc. So these are just things to consider when it comes to how Howard the Duck did. But for him to become who he was, he had to die first. There it is. Fun fact, he can't swim. Like most ducks, Howard the Duck, for some reason, does not have the ability to swim. He doesn't. And it's not common in his duck worldian situation. I thought that was super funny, so I wanted to point it out. So as a duck, you just could assume, but he does not swim. Drake meets male duck. This is very important. I didn't know that. So first off, if you're the hip-hop artist or rapper, whatever you want to call him, Drake fan, grow up. But I didn't realize that Drake means male duck. So first off, the rapper is male duck. That's what he means. And then also, in a lot of the jokes in Howard the Duck, they refer to him as a Drake. And I never understood what that was. And then I decided to look it up when I was researching this. And so just in case it wasn't common knowledge, maybe I'm the only one. If you walk away with knowledge from this that isn't from a comic book, from me to you, Drake means male duck, okay? There's a lot of jokes. And when I talk about notable events, we'll talk about the missing Drake. That's what that means, is male duck. So that's the fun fact I wanted to throw in for that, because it's actually pretty important, because a big thing about Howard the Duck stories is that they make avian-based jokes all the time, especially when you're in Duck World. So there it is. From their relationships, Ronald and Henrietta Duckson are his parents. Teresa and Orville Duckson are his siblings. We see them in one of the stories. We'll talk about the notable events. And Linda and Alexis are children by clone, because why not? And then very famously, Beverly Switzler is his model human girlfriend, whom he meets on his quests, and she follows around. They break up and they get back together, and they break up, what have you. So at this as a recording date, they could still be broken up, what have you. But in a lot of the adventures of Howard the Duck, you have Beverly Switzler. So if you happen to pick up a comic book or whatever, and you find that there's a random attractive woman, that she looks different depending on who's drawing and writing. She is a model. She follows him around on a lot of his adventures. That's who that is. Very important to note. Notable events. The origin of Howard the Duck. So Howard the Duck was born on Duck World, and as I said, was pulled into the Marvel 616 universe by Man-Thing, and then falls off the steps of Oblivion to end up in Cleveland, Ohio. So in living in Cleveland, Ohio, he comes to grips with the fact that he has to stay there, and he decides, hey, I'm going to make a name for myself in this here earth, and I am going to join the police force so people will like me, etc. So in doing so, he is reading the newspaper one day because this duck is, as I said before, he becomes a plumber. He's just some regular dude trying to make it. Also, as a duck superhero situation. So that, by the way, when I say looks like Daffy Duck, this is how he used to look. This is his both stories I'm telling today are from the original design. So very much looks like Daffy Duck. But he wants to make a name for himself for the police department. He reads the newspaper and he reads about the notorious serial killer, the farm stalker, who is going from farm to farm and draining the farmers of their blood. So Howard, being the incredibly super intelligent, and I mean that honestly, he actually has a genius level intellect. Think Rocket Raccoon in a duck body. Being the super intelligent person he's like, I'm gonna start walking around in the middle of the night dressed as a human so that I get attacked by this vampire, probably. Or he doesn't know it's a vampire at the time. I'm going to get attacked by this serial killer, and it's going to be amazing because I will thwart them, and it will work. So armed with only a broom, he goes out around 2 a.m., and he starts walking the streets at night, and eventually, none other than Bessie the Hell Cow finds him. So, Bessie the Hell Cow, a very much awaited character for Marvel Strike Force. This is... Scopely. I'm formally requesting that on April 1st of every year, very similar. This is my idea to you. You can use it for free. Like we have had the Undying releases on, in October, what have you, because zombies on April 1st, we need to get some of the Rogues Gallery, some of these crazy characters from Howard the Duck and other sources in the game. Bessie the Hell Cow, 2026, April 1st. Come on, Scopely. I'm challenging you. Bessie the Hell Cow. Anyway, so Bessie the Hell Cow was a cow just living a simple cow life in Switzerland. And Dracula, fleeing from the potential death of an angry mob, is starving to death, and he comes upon Bessie and decides to make Bessie his victim and drains Bessie of her blood, but does not finish the job all the way, and Bessie therefore becomes a hell cow, a vampiric cow, who then goes on adventures for 300 years looking for the creature, looking for the monster that turned Bessie from her simple life into this vampiric cow who has a insatiable lust for blood. It is this same 300-year quest that Bessie finds herself in Cleveland, Ohio, from Switzerland, and comes upon farmers in the outskirts of town and starts draining them of their blood. So, and one faithful night, a lone person is walking around the streets of Cleveland alone, and Bessie swoops down to find a Howard the Duck ready for competition. Howard turns around and bats Bessie off with the broom that he was secretly concealing as in his human form. Bessie regains her footing and attacks Howard and picks up Howard and throws him through the window of Ray's auto shop. In Ray's auto shop at this point, with the genius intellect of the super duck, he's not a super duck, but once again, many aliases, he determines that this is probably a vampiric cow, so he picks up the closest thing to him that looks like a cross, which is one of those T-tiered lug nut things that you have in the cars for like a tire iron, but the T-tiered ones, and he's able to push. Bessie runs in to attack him, and he's able to fight Bessie off with this cross, and he gets control of the situation and sees from the corner of his eye a wooden stake and mallet that all auto shops have. So he ditches the cross and grabs the stake and mallet from the side, and then he runs to impale Bessie through the heart, and is able to take out this bovine vampiric assailant. But he then takes the corpse of the vampire and buries it so that it doesn't return. But unbeknownst to our duck hero, you have to behead the vampire for it not to come back. So eventually Bessie does make a return, but this gets a little bit of acclaim for Howard, and he tries to use this to once again join the police force of Cleveland, Ohio, and he is denied. So from here we see Howard the Duck go on many little adventures like this, where they're once again one-offs, creature of the week type situation. We have somebody show up and then he has to deal with them, and then he fails. Most of the time he tries to run away. That's very important to note about Howard, especially early on in the writing. Most of the time he tries to flee, but is pursued by these things find him. So anyway, over time he does develop his private eye situation, and he also in a situation, he does go up against a wizard named Prorata, and Prorata uses accounting to make magic happen. And this is where from Prorata, he saves Beverly Switzler, who is in the next notable event. So that's why I did a quick little summary of that right there. And upon, they go on many adventures, and upon their first breakup is when he actually becomes permanently a private eye. And also in context, through the writing of this, once again, he's brought into Inception in 1973. Over the span of 20 years does he become this, right? And his writing, there are huge gaps in his publication history that go back and forth. There are copyright battles from Steve Gerber and him working with different things, different types of comics, Eclipse Comics specifically, I believe. So there are huge gaps where people aren't writing for Howard the Duck. So if you go back and try to read through his stuff, most of it's pretty recent. So with that though, I am going to talk about one of the things. So after Steve Gerber, the guy that started writing immediately after, whose name is eluding me right now, he wrote about Howard's return to Duck World, and that one is just wild enough that I wanted to bring it up. So here we are. So, return to Duck World. So once again, I was talking about how one-offs work. Usually there's a reason for, oh, hey, I'm going to a different dimension, right? In this situation, this is Howard the Duck Volume 2. That's how you know it's a different writer in this situation. It is Howard the Duck Volume 2, Issue 6. He and Betsy just randomly go to Duck World. It doesn't explain how. That's just sort of what happens. And anyway, they go back to Duck World, and the whole joke is that Betsy's the weird one, not Howard. That's the big flip. That's the satirical thing, what have you. So in returning to Duck World, they find out his disappearance was a big deal because it was witnessed by a bunch of people. These witnesses started a cult, which the cult is it is called the Witness Ascent Cult, also known as the Wackies. So the Wackies see the return of their of their Messiah, right? So when he left, when the portal opened, he in Duck World notably yelled "Get down!" Right? So in Get Down, the people, and actually what we ended up finding out later, Godfrey Gander, the pastor, the prophet, the main cheese in the wacky cult, backed financially by Scourge Mc. It's not Duck. It's obviously a play on Scrooge McDuck. It's Scourge. I might not have written it down. Oh, Scourge McDrake. I didn't write it down, but that's it. Remember Drake. Financially backed by Scourge McDrake and led by Godfrey Gander, who ends up being one of Howard's big rivals, is Gander. They took the message of Get Down, as in, don't pursue your goals and ambitions, just give up and life will be easier for you. So upon seeing their savior returned, Betsy and Howard are chased away, and Howard tries to return to his old home to find out that the Wackies' base of operation is his home now, and this is where he first runs into Gander, and Gander sees him and brings up their new motto based on what he said before he disappeared, and he's like, that's ridiculous. You should pursue the things that you want to do, because that's the entire base of all of my characterization and pretty much every story I do. He's always trying to get something done, right? So it's the exact opposite. So he denounces this, and he encouraged everyone to start all the ducks to various waterfowl to start thinking for themselves. And everyone's like, that's a great idea. And he's like, I could be a big thing here. I'm gonna go on the Tonight Show with Johnny Quackson. And so he goes on there, and the big surprise is that he is reunited with his family, which is pictured here on our feature situation. So he goes on there to be able to tell everybody, hey, this is all going to be great. And Gander is very angry, so he reaches out to Dr. Ludwig von Kluck to prove that there's a weird relationship going on. Something's weird with this random human thing running around with Howard. So Dr. von Kluck decides to make a machine that is going to pull the skin off of Betsy so that they could see. So I've been saying Betsy, but I came to the realization that it's been Beverly the entire time. It's even on the screen in front of me. I don't know where I got Betsy, but moving forward, Beverly is Howard's girlfriend in this context. So Dr. Von Kluck is trying to prove he believes that Beverly is a robot. So what he does is he creates this giant sucking machine that is going to suck the skin off her and expose the truth of what's going on here, that he is dating this robot, and he's leading on everybody. He's trying to discredit Howard. So they get on stage and they are talking, and then this goes on. So the whole thing with Beverly being this model type, very often is she depicted with no clothes in one form or another because it's funny. So in this situation, instead of her skin ripping off, it just rips off her clothes, and she is naked on stage in front of all of the Duck World. And Duck World is appalled to see a naked human woman. So Howard and Beverly go on the run. So in the end, actually, Gander kind of wins this, but they go on the run, and they find Doctor Strange, who is the Duck World equivalent of Doctor Strange, obviously, who is drunk in an alley, of course. Where else would you be if you were a practitioner of the mystic arts? So he's drunk in an alley, and as they're trying to convince him to cast a spell to send them back to the 616 universe, they are attacked by Scourge McDrake sent assailants to apprehend them because he's mad that all of their things have kind of fallen apart due to Howard's denouncing of their religion or whatever. And they bring guns and such, and by using trash cans in various situations, they take out their assailants one by one. They are able to take these assailants down one by one and give Doctor Strange enough time to figure out the spell and send them back to Marvel 616. So that is the end of those are the notable events. Those are some of the funny, there's a lot of funny stuff with Howard the Duck. If you want to read something that ties into the Marvel Universe that is actually pretty funny, besides Deadpool, Howard the Duck has some pretty solid bits. This one that I just referenced often isn't considered one of the well-written ones, but I found it really funny, so there's that. I did find that as I was doing research for this one, Steve Gerber, the guy who originally created Howard the Duck, and I said I had that back and forth. The last thing he wrote about him was it was a Howard the Duck a little comic arc, and he's a mouse. He's turned into a mouse or something. I've never read it, but it looks really good. And according to forums online, it seems like that is often considered one of the better runs. So I would check that out as well. I intend to soon. But anyway, with that, we're going to talk about power level. Now, Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power levels, but here at Frosty Features we do. Now, the way that this works, if you are a multiversal threat, that means you can end all of reality. Not just your reality, but the top of the multiverse at a whim. Universal means you can end your reality, maybe then hop on over to another reality and end those one at a time, attacking the multiverse on a slower level. Cosmic means you have power equivalent to that, you have power strong enough to take out things like cosmic or planetary bodies, taking out planets or galaxies or solar systems with enough time and effort. Nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, just destroying things like small towns all the way up to small planetary bodies once again, with enough time and effort. Super Soldier means you are beyond all human capability, being able to push past those limits, but not bounds beyond that of human possibility, leveling things like brick walls up to city blocks with enough time and effort. City means you are equivalent to that of a human being, but trained to the absolute and utter peak of human ability. Therefore, we have here a lot of ninjas, secret agents, things like that, mercenaries in the Marvel Universe, where we have a lot of our city level people, very equivalent to that of an Olympic level athlete here in our real world. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that is spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force, and without a undying team to back him up, Greg is extraordinarily weak and cannot do anything. And we are going to, due to undead Asgardian physiology, just because I like to make the argument, we are going to equate him to regular human being levels of feat. So with that, in the dark streets of Cleveland, Ohio, there was a serial killer going around and destroying all home good owners, store owners, and I decided to disguise myself as a home good store owner, armed with nothing but a broom. And so I go and set up my Frosty's Night Emporium of home goods, and I only run at night, and nobody ever comes in. But lo and behold, one fateful night, the assailant burst through the door. Greg, armed with his scimitar-looking Asgardian sword thing, and a look of malice, and I, the most frosty of Osties, armed with only whatever I said I had, but I'm gonna change it, I guess, because we're just going off the cuff here. I'm using a very fabulous antique lamp that has been massively reproduced, which is why it's in my home emporium, to defend myself. And due to the fact that it happened to be cast iron, very high qualities do we have at Austin's home, and our Frosty Austy's home and Midnight home emporium. We're just changing the name all the time. This reality that we were speaking in has a lot of dimensional warps, as referenced in Howard the Duck's blog post description. But anyway, the fight ensues between the store owner and the undead Asgardian, and lo and behold, coming out the other end, I end up smashing the cast iron in half and impaling our serial killer assailant, Greg, the undead Asgardian, and Frosty comes out victorious. Anyway, Greg is equivalent to that of a regular human being. In the case of Howard the Duck, we have a duck that can move at superhuman speeds. There are times where he has mystic capabilities, and often he has some form of arsenal with him. He also, debatably, there's no reference you can find of this, but because of his cartoonish nature, there is a bit of a Toon Force vibe to him, where he happens upon, or almost you can look at it as like the power of Domino from X-Force, but he kind of happens to luck into things that help him win his situation very often. So I'm going to equate him to that of a city level individual. He has a genius intellect. He has super speed, essentially. He is very physically weak, but once again, he always seems to have the things he needs to get things done. So you can almost make the argument that he can tussle at the super soldier level. But really, if you're able to get a hold of the duck, you'll be able to take out the duck. That's going to be the main thing with Howard the Duck here. So that's where we're going to put that. As for the blog post, this really isn't bad. It does point out in here that the duck has no powers, and that's a bit of a that's not quite right. There are powers there, and very often is he seen moving faster than humans. That's that big cartoonish aspect. Also, my argument for the Toon Force, maybe it's not reflexes, but him tapping into something like that. But regardless, I'm gonna say this is a nice try. It's well written. It has a pretty decent description, and it's obviously referencing the more modern version of Howard the Duck. But I do think it's a decent shot. So not too bad on Scopely's part there. So with that was Frosty Features Howard the Duck. Please let me know your favorite Howard the Duck moments, movies, comics, even in game, in the comments below. I would love to hear it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. And as a reminder, I stream on Twitch and YouTube now. Twitch link is above, where we do Frosty Features live Sundays, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. I hope that you all have a fantastic, fantastic weekend. Most importantly, y'all, stay cool.